Especially now, take the opportunity. Starting to jog is also the start for your muscles and the right diet. With these tips, you will enjoy jogging for a long time and it won't be a one-time thing. Here are 5 scientifically proven tips for jogging beginners who want to lose weight and improve their fitness. That's usually the reason why you start jogging. Now it's time for you to get started. And that's why we're starting this video now. And my first tip, write down the 5 tips I'm about to give you on a piece of paper. And then take a look at this piece of paper with the 5 tips every morning or before every running session. And you'll soon understand why. Hello, my name is Dr. Tobias Wegel. On my YouTube channel, I would like to provide medical, understandable, and correct information about diseases, their causes, and current health topics. Of course, the topics of nutrition, exercise, and sports play a crucial role. If you don't want to miss anything, subscribe now. The most important thing is to set yourself clear and achievable goals. No hypothetical and unattainable goals, and not over-motivated, both in terms of running performance and weight loss. Setting goals can increase motivation and track progress. This is important. For example, write down exactly how many kilos you want to lose, or how long you want to run at a time. This study has shown that such clear goals are really important for motivation, so that is scientifically proven. This makes it much easier for you to see your initial progress. This is really motivating, especially when your weaker self kicks in, which usually happens for the first time after 6 to 8 or 10 weeks. Also, set a goal for the more distant future. For example, that in 12 months you will jog 10 kilometers for the first time. And my insider tip is, set a goal and make it public. You are welcome to write it in the comments below this video. Why does this help? Well, let's call it positive pressure. Something like this also helps to overcome the inner bastard. Especially after 10 or 12 months, the goals you set yourself at the beginning are often pushed aside again. That was the first thing about motivation. I'll give you 5 tips that you should keep in mind as a beginner. Tip number 1, slow down. Actually, I should motivate you now, but then I make such a statement. Why am I saying this? Because the results come at the end. I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. Start slowly and then increase gradually. Those are 2 very important words, increase slowly and gradually. This is a very important principle, especially for beginners. Start at a leisurely pace, the so-called chattering pace. In other words, so that you can still have a good conversation. And start with a short distance to build up your fitness and avoid injury. So, short distance and chattering pace, and gradually you can increase the running duration and also the running intensity. In principle, there are 3 important parameters to consider, at least at the beginning: frequency, scope or duration, and intensity. These 3 aspects are usually done completely wrong, especially when you are completely clueless and totally over-motivated at the beginning. I'll explain the 3 aspects in more detail in a moment. And the second important point when I say slow down, it means take breaks. Regeneration is often underestimated, especially by novice runners. Your body needs time to recover from stress, especially if you have had a long break from exercise. Otherwise, there is a risk of injury and you may fall ill more quickly. Be sure to watch this video about how too much running without breaks actually damages your immune system. This is called open window because then you are susceptible to pathogens. That's why it's important to recover well. Sure, at the beginning you are very motivated and want to start running straight away. However, without good training planning, this can really backfire. And planning is the right keyword for my next point. Tip number 2, training plan for beginners. A moment ago, I told you that you should write down all of the 5 tips I mentioned, as well as the things I mentioned after that. There is no golden training plan, but there are a few basic rules. These refer to the frequency mentioned, that is, how often you run, the extent or the duration, and the intensity. As a beginner, your intensity should be as low as possible, and that's where you often make the mistake. Instead, please focus on frequency. The recommendation is to run 2 to 3 times a week. In such a way that you are not exhausted afterwards, you should only increase the running duration after a few weeks, approximately after 6 to 8 weeks. And as a beginner, you shouldn't increase the intensity, for example, through sprints, mountain runs and such, because the risk of injury, exhaustion, and the risk of being mentally exhausted is too high. And remember again, you have another goal in 12 months. Instead, and this is crucial, run regularly. Consistency is key. Plan your running days and stick to the agreement. Studies show, so it is scientifically proven, that regular running is more effective for weight loss, is better for the cardiovascular system, and leads to improved fitness. This is better than sporadic sessions, where you do a lot, then nothing for days, or in the worst case, you do 2 intense and long sessions. This is counterproductive. You should therefore draw up a training plan, and if possible, and depending on your needs, seek advice from a running coach or an experienced runner, or from a friend. Remember though, you're supposed to make it public, so tell some friends about it. You probably have a friend who knows a little bit about running. And here is my specific training plan for the first 4 weeks. You can also use it for longer. This is aimed at beginners who want to get started straight away. It should serve as orientation and give you a feeling. It reflects what I just said. It's not a matter of adhering to it exactly. You always have to adapt it to the reality of life. We are going to start with 2 times 20 minutes to get started. If you can't do this, just run for a minute, then walk for a minute. But the important thing is that you keep going. From the second week onwards, run 3 times and gradually try to run a little longer and always walk a little less. But don't put pressure on yourself. The successes come little by little. After a while, you will notice how you become fitter and get through everyday life more fitly. This will give you real motivation. And remember the previous tip? Then it's important to slow down. Tip number 3, nutrition counts from the start. And that is very important now. Take this as an opportunity. Training starts in the kitchen. Running alone is not enough to lose weight. A healthy diet is crucial. If you want to start now and have the goal of running 10 kilometers, change your diet now. Seize the opportunity. A balanced diet. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, protein. Avoid overly processed foods and reduce your intake of sugary drinks and junk food. Everything you keep hearing, everything I keep saying in my videos. So, these are basically the recurring tips that you've probably heard before, but that you might not want to hear anymore. But take the opportunity now to question and adapt your diet. In fact, I do that all the time. I do this again and again, because there are always habits and neglect that you don't even notice. And secondly, your need for micro and macronutrients changes too. Now you're suddenly doing sport and exerting yourself. Now that you're starting to exercise, you need more minerals. You also sweat out more sodium. You need more vitamins because your body consumes much more of them. And you also need more protein so that your muscles can regenerate and grow well. Important. If you start jogging or any other sport now, you will have an increased consumption of micronutrients such as vitamin D and sodium. Usually this isn't a problem at all at the beginning because once you start training, the strain isn't that high yet. But perhaps you have actually had a nutrient deficiency for a long time. This means that you start with a deficit and exercise could increase this even further. You should therefore also use the start of your jogging training to have a checkup with your doctor. Keyword cardiovascular system, and check your blood values. Take vitamin D, vitamin B12, or whatever you want. Measure, evaluate, then adjust your diet if necessary, and if necessary, supplement it. As you can see, nutrition is also a huge subject area, and you should start now. If you want to start running now, don't put it off any longer. Namely, the timing of the meal. This plays a really important role in meeting energy requirements. Before your workout, your diet should focus on either a balanced meal or a snack that contains carbohydrates and a moderate amount of protein. So, if you know you're going to start jogging 2 to 3 times a week now, try eating good healthy carbohydrates beforehand, like whole grain pasta. This provides the necessary fuels and amino acids for sustainable energy and muscle support during exercise. It is recommended to eat 1 to 3 hours before training to allow for digestion. You should not start running on a full stomach. This will make you feel nauseous. Post-workout nutrition is crucial for recovery and replenishing glycogen stores. You should eat a combination of protein and slightly fewer long-chain carbohydrates within 30 to 60 minutes of your workout. This is important in order to optimize muscle repair and the replenishment of glycogen stores, the energy store, so to speak. This helps start the recovery process and promotes muscle growth. And above all, it protects you from feeling really flat and exhausted days later and saying, "Oh, all that jogging. Now I really notice how I'm getting into a slump. I have no energy at all." You need that continuous supply of nutrients that support energy levels, muscle repair, and overall health. And again, you are now exercising and your nutrient needs are changing. This is an important sentence. The training starts in the kitchen. And as if that were not enough, please do not forget about the adequate supply of fluids, i.e. water. This is very important. 2 to 3 liters daily, and if you sweat a lot, maybe more. The body simply needs it. Now you are doing sports, you are sweating, you are jogging, so you need more fluids. Tip number 4, strength and flexibility training. And also very important as a beginner, supplement your running training with strength training and stretching exercises to build up your muscles and stabilize your joints, and also to prevent injuries. It's clear that strength training can help burn fat, because the more muscles you have, the higher your basal metabolic rate. I always call it cheating. So you should also do other sports besides running. My tip is to only run twice a week, but also do strength and stretching exercises once. If you exercise 3 times a week, twice running and once doing something like rowing, that's a very good idea. This strengthens the cardiovascular system and the muscles, especially the core muscles. And this sporty cheating, and I say this intentionally so that you remember it and then do it, is important in order to compensate for incorrect strain and imbalances that can occur through jogging exclusively. So, if you have decided to start jogging now, you have to adjust your diet and practice one more sport. It can be yoga, it can be strength training, stretching, rowing, or whatever you enjoy. And what comes next may still be a long way off for you. But I can tell you an anecdote. If you run a marathon, and I have now completed 15 marathons, including this one, then you will see how your fellow runners start to bend forward at kilometer 30 or 35, or how they perhaps also bend to the side or start to drag one leg behind them. It then fails because of the general musculature. This is caused by one-sided strain or imbalances, which then suddenly become visible. And that shouldn't be the case, even if you only jog for a few meters or minutes, because then you already have this imbalance. In the long term, this increases the risk of injury and typically problems with the joints, which can lead to osteoarthritis. So, when you start jogging, you should also start a compensatory sport at the same time. Call it cheating if you like. My insider tip, even for beginners, fasting training. So, for some, it is absolutely unthinkable. Other athletes swear by this absolute expert tip, namely fasting training. During my triathlon and Ironman days, fasting training was an integral part of my routine. Basically, I still do that, because that's important. So here are my tips. So firstly, if you do this, it's best not to eat any carbohydrates the night before so that your storage is really empty the next day. Secondly, drink a glass of cold water in the morning. If you can tolerate it, black coffee will get your metabolism going. Thirdly, do the fasting training in the morning, because you can't eat beforehand. There's no point in doing this in the afternoon because you've already had breakfast or lunch. And fourthly, do the fasting workout for no longer than 45 to 60 minutes. No one should do it for more than 2 hours because there is a risk that you won't concentrate properly. And fifth, don't make the heart rate or the load too high. Chattering pace. Sixth tip, after fasting training, replenish your energy stores with good carbohydrates and proteins. I've basically said that before. These were 6 tips that I have now said in a hurry on how you can really do a good fast fasting workout. And those were my 5 tips. And I said that you should write them down and always look at them. And last but not least, of course, clothing also plays an important role. I recommend that you buy something that you feel comfortable in. I recommend alternating the shoes, because this is important for the footbed. And personally, I'm more likely to get good clothes than bad ones. And most importantly, especially in the wintertime, you should always wear layers. This is always very important to protect yourself from hypothermia. These are my tips. Now let's start running. Comment on the video. Thank you and stay tuned.